Hi there, and welcome to the Modern Mind interview series, where we talk to real people who are doing their best to be their best every day and also working to practice mental fitness here and there. Today, we have an incredible human. She is a writer, a theater maker, and a diner, and we'll touch on a little bit of all of this today. We have Narie Foster with us, so welcome to the show, Narie.
Thank you. Hello. Happy to be here.
Amazing. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I would love to hear a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Well, I love, thank you for the three words. Writer and theater maker are sort of new, somewhat new forays for me professionally. And I have a history in entrepreneurship and tech and business. And now I consider myself a creative and an artist. So that's been really fun. And then I added diner in there because, and I could also say friend but a huge amount of my time and money goes to enjoying food with friends and sometimes alone. So yeah, weirdly, that's a big part of my life as well.
That's not weird at all, considering most of us are
Not
meant
weird.
to do it three times a day. So we love that.
Sustains, yes, life. Exactly.
Exactly. It sounds like a proper mental fitness practice, which we'll get to later. But before we do that, so you said that you recently started calling yourself a creative. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey to here? Like, what have you been doing?
Yes, it's been kind of a slow build and then suddenly very fast. I would say in hindsight, since I was a kid, there were signs. I just didn't see them because I grew up around scientists and was a sort of the obvious path was engineering and then, financially secure jobs and corporate life and tech. And that ultimately took me to entrepreneurship and kind of somewhat traditional business success. But then while that was all happening, there was kind of this little voice inside that was there's something else. There's a lot of deep thinking and feelings and just like things moving inside that need to come out, not just emotionally as a human, but also maybe creatively as just like having something to say. So I would say that actually probably during COVID, so about 4 years ago, started really putting time into writing, taking randoms in classes, storytelling, comedy, and then that turned into in-person classes, improv, and different clown, just like different forms of both writing and ultimately performance and comedy, and that in the end has most recently turned into theater. And yeah, like long story short, I went to what's called the Edinburgh Fringe Festival last year, which is this huge performing arts festival, and was just so blown away by what everyone else was doing that I recognized I really wanted to be part of it and wrote my own show. And so, yeah, just a few weeks ago, I performed my first hour-long solo show that I wrote and produced and performed, and it's very surprising to everyone in my life, including my family and my friends and me. But something about it feels very right. And so now I've left behind the sort of remaining. I still had some part-time tech and businessy things, and now I consider myself a full-time creative.
Wow. Now, I should have started with this. Narie is one of my best friends from college. And so I have a little bit of insider knowledge that I'm going to poke around here because I think that sometimes people talk about these big jumps and they feel like, I wish I could do that, but they're really different than me. There must be some sort of like background or maybe like insane financial success that's now fueling this ability to do this kind of work. But like, we really tried to kind of like get to know people so that if someone's sitting in your seat, maybe working at one of these big corporations or at a startup and thinking, wow, I also feel like this is stirring, like, what were your steps? Like, yeah, if you could get a little more specific, obviously you don't have to say any of the names of companies or anything that, doesn't make you feel comfortable, but yeah, just so that people can get a little bit more of a view of like what the emotional journey was like for you so that they can do that maybe too.
Yes. Okay. I think there were, so I'm a big believer in sort of following the, if you want to call it little glimmers or just clues, like anytime you get some sort of signal, even just like in your gut, in your heart, whatever you want to call it, maybe you get the chills, right? Just like these little signs that there's something there that maybe I want. Right. And so, and I often I like to relate it to eating as well, right? It's like, oh, that's the thing on the menu that I want to eat. And we kind of all know what it feels like to know what our preference is there. But I certainly was not really in tune with that in other parts of life, including, how do I want to spend my time and what do I want to contribute to the world? I think I just kind of fell into maybe what was expected and opportunities that were just in front of me, regardless of what I was choosing. So I spent a while sort of starting to follow those, but somewhat half-heartedly, not really trusting that this could possibly be real. And it was always like safer to call it a hobby or just like a thing I'm trying on the side. And I would say so. And what that looked like, it was literally talking to people who were doing things that I was curious about. And at the time, it wasn't like, oh, let me talk to you because I want to maybe do this one day. It was just like, for some reason, I want to ask you a lot of questions. I don't know why. And then that turned into, wait a second, this is actually something I might be interested in doing, even though I have no belief that it's possible. But let me at least take the first step, which in my case was taking little classes, like $150 classes over 6 weeks or something, like different things on Zoom that, I was living in New York, but I was never in town enough until COVID. And so suddenly when we were all home and, now it's just standard practice to have classes on Zoom. So if anywhere in the world you can take relatively cheap classes and just see how it feels. So for me, the first class, it was just super random, heard of one class that was a writing class. And then in that class, which didn't even hit the spot, but there was one class that we were assigned a humor writing piece. And then I happened to get picked to read my piece out loud. And then I was kind of like, oh, I liked reading my humor piece out loud. And I like that these little rectangular people on Zoom are like smiling while I'm telling a story, right? And then suddenly I was like, oh, maybe I want to tell jokes. Like I never thought of myself as funny. And so, okay, then the next thing, what is stand-up comedy? And I tried that and I did it a little bit. And then it was like, oh, I don't really love the format, but I love the storytelling when it's funny. So then I went into storytelling. So it was kind of just like one tiny step at a time. And that was over the course of a couple of years because I needed to take it pretty slow because it was all quite scary. But just like each little test, right? Like super low risk. Okay, I'm just going to take this class where everyone is no more experienced than I am. And then I'm going to do the class show where other people's friends are there, but it's still a very safe space. And then I'm going to do this very safe feeling open mic. And then now, fast forward a few years, and then I perform my show in front of hundreds of people who I didn't know in another country, right? But I never would have even admitted that I wanted to do that 4 years ago. So yeah, I really believe in kind of baby steps and then just listening to those internal signals and just learn, experimenting from there.
Amazing. And I'm going to ask you a twofold question. I'd love to hear both. One is so it sounds like you said, it's these small steps that kind of like started to build this confidence to say like, okay, yes, this is something I'm interested in. This tastes good to me if we're using the meal metaphor. And you kept going. But I'm wondering, were there like 1 to 2 really positive moments that like nudged you along? And then were there 1 or 2 moments where you're like, I don't know if I can do this?
Yes, definitely. Well, you, Lissy, are actually familiar with one of them, if you can call it a moment, but certainly a turning point was when we did The Artist's Way together. So for people who don't know, it's a book that you can kind of follow along. It's a process for 12 weeks of trying to access your inner creative, which I had probably rolled my eyes at multiple times. And, and maybe it's not for everyone, but I think we sort of said, okay, let's do this and we held each other accountable and we reread each chapter and did the exercises. And I wonder if you had the same experience, but for me at the time, it just hit the right tone in terms of the permission it gave and the sort of the excuse to spend a little bit of time dreaming and and trying to turn off all the other voices and just recognizing, oh, everyone else has all of these voices telling you not to do this. I don't know, that was, and it just happened to be timed, I think, at the same time that I was also taking more and more classes. And then, and there were kind of two, it was like the outcomes of that were, one, I want to dance more, and two, I want to maybe be on stage or write, just like create theater or film or different things. And yeah, weirdly enough, like dancing has been this funny parallel, and very similarly, willingness to look stupid, following what your body's telling you to do, finding these almost meditative or self-expressive moments of different forms, and just like finding an internal voice. So the combination of kind of discovering dancing and giving myself permission to like go to weird dancing classes and whatever DJs and different, like, despite having sort of almost, yeah, it's not, I wouldn't, not like trauma around it, but just like a negative feelings around dancing up until that point. Plus the artist way and all the kind of the journaling and the discussion that it created. So anyway, that's long-winded, but that was definitely one big turning point over the course of, it probably took us a year, even though it was supposed to take us 12 weeks.
We're lucky we finished it. Most people don't finish it. So, we did it.
The other big one was for sure, and I recommend this to anyone, even if you're not even thinking you might be a creative, but just generally you want to open your mind, going to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which is in August every year in Scotland. It is a month-long festival of performing arts, and it is like 3,500, I think, people. There are shows and people just doing the most experimental, weirdest, funniest, like craziest stuff. And a lot of it is just so brilliant, and a lot of it is also very experimental, and getting to see the combination and just seeing so many people taking risks like that, and the fact that there's audiences for all of it, and that there's I know many people who would not have considered themselves even interested in like the creative arts or performing arts, and then went and maybe are like very have very corporate jobs, and they were just like, I came back home really inspired, and I didn't expect that. So that was a huge turning point for me. It was just like, oh, people, you're allowed to do anything you want. Like there are all these other people doing the weirdest shows.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And then with the second part, sort of the opposite. What were the moments of, I think I got a little bit stuck in the stand-up comedy path, in that it felt like I had found this thing at first, and I got so excited, and it was something I never thought I'd be able to do, and it was like, oh, I guess can be funny when I have a script that's written in advance. And that was, it felt so good to be on stage. That, again, something that I just had never given myself permission to do or to want. But then I started going to these open mics in New York, and I would just come home so depressed, and not because I didn't feel like I was doing a good job, or like I was meeting other people who seemed cool, but it was just, the energy was very like dark. And yeah, just kind of depressing. And it doesn't have to be, of course, there are many exceptions to this, but I think having to tell a joke, right, like almost every beat is a different type of storytelling and of humor. And for me, it just like didn't quite connect, but I hadn't really heard of other options. So I just kept trying to do this thing. And I was like, why am I just sort of like, it doesn't feel right. It's not coming naturally to me, but I haven't seen other examples. So I guess I'll just keep trying this. So that was a little bit of like a little detour, or just like a dead end for a little bit. That was one. I would say, another one, which I'm not sure I can pinpoint a specific moment, but certainly sort of family judgment, or not like blatant judgment, but just like I would say my family does not know what to make of any of this. And I think they're trying to be supportive, but they definitely don't quite get it. So I would say for me, that's been both like the biggest blocker to get past, even for myself to keep going. And on a regular basis, like, again, they're still extremely sort of supportive in all the ways that they can be. But it's still like a little bit of a friction for me internally, especially.
Yeah, no, thanks for being honest about that, because I think that probably is really hard. It's very fun to hear when somebody completely transforms their career from business and entrepreneurship, which are like very well-worn, excitable things for parents, because usually health insurance and money comes with that, into the amorphous world of creativity and building things and making things like theater. So thank you for sharing more of that. It's interesting because when we think about mental fitness, there's so many different facets, and you're obviously familiar. We've got the Mindy model. The mental muscle that comes up for me, Narie, in this case, is confidence. So at Mindy, we talk about confidence as essentially the practice of believing in yourself to do a task. Most people think about confidence as thinking you're awesome. It's like self-worth or self-esteem, but actually the psychologically repeatable concept is believing in yourself to do a task. And there's 4 scientifically backed ways to do that. So the first is, we say you grow it. You go watch other people. So you touched on that. Going to the fringe is really cool. Go watch other people do this. The second is role play, which is really practicing. And I want to hear a little bit more about how you think about practice as opposed to like performance. The third is having other people pump you up. So you've mentioned, obviously, there's been some people maybe who are more open to this and some people who are less, but like, how have you thought about building community around you as you've been taking all these steps? And the last is warming up your emotions and or your body through ritual. So like, what are the things that you do when you are feeling scared or are feeling afraid or things are feeling hard to really get your head in the game? So we can kind of go step by step, but you talked about watching other people at the fringe. So I'm curious, like, what does practice versus performance look and feel like for you?
Yes. This was a huge thing for me to learn the practice of practice, and the permission of practice, or just like in that you can fail, or whatever you want to define failure as, but it's not going to be perfect. And for me, that was a huge thing to get past, is like, I'm so new at this. I'm going to do things that are very embarrassing and amateur. And
by the way, I'm sorry, I have to ask, what are the embarrassing amateur things? We need to hear like one mini anecdote.
Yeah, I mean, right. Again, I think stand-up comedy is sort of a classic place where people, before we see the Netflix special, right, it's been worked on 100 times in the backs of bars and whatever else, right? And so that actually was right. So yeah, to say something that when you wrote it down you thought was funny, and then there's just crickets, and right, and or like people leaving the room, right? So I think it was very important for me, first, to your first point, to see a bunch of other people bomb, as they call it, right? Or just like not be that good that night. And and then they would come back, and to see the examples of that, like I needed to see both in these open mics and at the fringe. What was almost more helpful for me to see was to see people being imperfect and like maybe doing things that I would have been like, I would never go on stage and do that. And to see it, right, and still to see audiences clapping for them, and or like they didn't die at the end, right? Like they somewhat survived. So for me, the biggest practice is doing things that I don't feel are perfect yet, and doing them in front of people, putting them out there. Even on like an Instagram post, I never used to post anything, and then I had to market my show. And it takes me half a day still, like 4 to 5 hours to do one Instagram post, because I'm thinking about every single.
They're really good, by the way.
Well, they better be.
Yeah.
But it's so I'm so protective of what I put out there, historically. So, but it is impossible to get good at performing, especially in like understanding what resonates with audiences, without just trying things and letting them fail. So, and that meant, and I also, almost as a dare to myself, like I put in my show a lot of things that would be very scary for me to do on stage, including dancing on stage, being like weird animal costumes on stage. like trying to be like physical humor, which I've never done before, but I just saw the people do it, and it's like that would be scary. I should try. um, Almost like to beat this out of me because because I just started to see through so many other people that this is what's holding me back. This is why if I keep being a perfectionist, I'm never going to get there. Um, so and it's still so painful, but so far, like I have, I have like, again, I haven't died yet, which but it's whatever. It's been a very, just like a big risk taking year, which I'm super proud of. And to your, I think you mentioned this about confidence, right? Um, I always think about how like the confidence doesn't come. It's not like you have to have the confidence first, right? For example, to go do a one woman show. It's like after doing the one woman show, I have the confidence, and now I feel like I can do literally anything. Um, but what I could do, what I had the confidence to do, to your point, was like, yes, I have the confidence to like submit an application. I have the confidence to write the first page. I have the confidence to do 10 minutes on stage, right? And then that no, but I had the confidence barely to like step out on stage for the first minute of my first show, but I was freaking out. But but from there, it's like, I can't get off stage. I have to keep going. So, and then by the end, it's like, oh, okay, that's the scariest thing I've ever done. But now that I've done it, other things do not feel as scary.
I love it. Wow. Okay, that's amazing. There's so many good pieces in there, but I want to make sure we get on track here.
Yes,
So,
sorry.
who
Yes.
supports you in these scary moments? No apologies needed. Um, who supports you in like these moments of imperfection or scariness or whenever you need a push or a cheer?
Can I say you?
Yes, you can.
Biggest hack, recommend to everyone, get Lissy Alden as a best friend. Yeah, no, but I mean, but really, I think you and I think close friends, which I have historically not always done the best job of sort of maintaining and cultivating, but it is single-handedly the best support I could ever ask for. And I think, I mentioned that I didn't necessarily like grow up knowing how to have like that level of trust and intimacy with my family, and so it's been a learning process to get there with friends. But almost by necessity, I've had to learn how, because I could not have done any of this without people to cry to, people to cheer me on, or just say, yeah, that's weird, but I think you can do it. So that's the biggest thing. And then, and now that I'm sort of entering this world, and I think, again, these sort of affordable-ish classes, meeting other people who are just as scared and just as new to it. Like, that's what's so nice about these beginner classes. Like, you're never going to be the worst person there. Like, you're not going to. Oh, yeah, I'm never going to be the best, no matter what I do. But it's just like, there's the safety of other people also just getting started, and where, as opposed to sort of the intimidating, like if I watch only stand-up comedians on TV, I will only believe I can never do it. But if I watch 10 other people who are just starting now, it's like, oh yeah, whatever it is, peer groups, whether it's from classes or from theater, has all kinds of communities. I'm still trying to build it. Once you start to go again, where if you follow your own glimmers, there are other people following theirs, and kind of catching them along the way.
I love it. I love it. I love it. The following the glimmers thing is making me smile. So thank you for the term. Okay. Last one is this like ritual, warming up your body through ritual. So this is kind of the portion where we like people to talk a little bit about different mental fitness things that they do to help them through these moments of fear or excitement, whatever it is. Because I think that we usually think that people just have their shit together and that they show up on stage. But in so many ways, as we've learned, like you're doing incredible work on yourself and just like on your work to make sure you can prepare for a show. So what are some rituals or things that you do to get your mind strong? when you need it?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I would say I'll talk about shows in a second, but in terms of just daily life, probably the two biggest things that I do regularly. One is journaling, and sometimes I journal out loud to friends, and it just feels like sort of the same thing. Like you have received many a word vomit. Um, but if there's not a friend right there, the page can also receive the word vomit, and maybe doesn't give as much back. But but often, yeah, just to get it all out. Right. This is speaking of the artist's way. Right. This is another thing that it teaches is just the morning pages is what they call it, which I'm not much of a morning person, so I would do it in the afternoon. But just like not letting yourself stop writing. That has been that just it's like a free, easy auto. Like there's like anywhere I am, I can do that. So, or for some people, they do like voice recordings, even if it's not to send to anyone, but just to get it all out. So I find that really helpful. And then I also, I mean, now people call it mindfulness. For me, I just call it staring into space. Like, I do it all the time. Like I'm sort of I don't like using my phone, and but yeah, so like when I'm commuting, when I'm walking, when I'm um waiting in a line, I like, and it's almost by necessity because I think my brain has so much happening. I just like, and then I think I was trained to do this as a child because we did a lot of like waiting with no. This just makes my parents sound awful. They were lovely parents, but we did a lot of waiting, like without any toys or people or things to do, and so I did a lot of sort of sitting and waiting, and now I find and I travel a lot, right? So just like at the airport, I will just sit forever, and sometimes I'm thinking actively, but more often I'm just kind of zoning out, and I think that has actually weirdly become this ritual and secret to because there's so much processing that's happening even if I'm not actively processing. So I need that a lot, and so I find I love it if someone's like running late and I have to sit there for longer. Yeah, I I do it to extreme levels. Before my shows, so and this is new because I so now I've only in this year I've done my show 18 times, and the first time was fully the most afraid I've ever been in my entire life. Um, and
And by the way,
somebody,
what was the show called?
it's called One in a Chameleon.
Amazing.
It's an animal pun. Yes, and it's a combination of storytelling and theater and physical humor and all kinds of things. But it's um, somebody else had told me I didn't know really any other artists going into it, but it happened literally the day before my first show. I happened to talk to another performer who had been doing it for a long time, and I asked him like, "What do you do in those 10 minutes when you're waiting for your show to start? Because I think I will be in the worst possible mental state." And I don't know if I'm going to get through it. Like hearing the audience coming in, and I'm standing in this little closet waiting to come out, and I won't know my lines. Um, and he was just like, "I meditate." um, and this weird, it just wouldn't have crossed my mind that that is a thing that you could do. And that's what I did. I sat in this little closet. I had my like, layers of costumes on. I heard the people coming in. I was terrified, and it was like too late to practice, right? Like at that point, I'm not going to get my lines any better with 10 more minutes of practice, right? So it was just like I have no choice. There's nothing I can do, so I'm just going to sit here and close my eyes and do as clear my brain as much as I can, and just like try not to have thoughts. And I think that saved me. And now and it's funny because now there's not even always time. Um, but there's always at least like 30 seconds. So I still have that practice going into a show of because it's like too late to solve any more problems. You just have to, you just like whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, and believe me, like the problems happened. but you're right. The best thing you can do at that time is just be present and as clear-headed as possible, and just like take a step into the theater. Um, and that's yeah. So I'm not otherwise much of a meditator, but that is the place that I have. There's nothing else, nothing else to do.
I'm blown away because I do feel like usually people think that they'll meditate when they're like in a field and their life slows down and when everything is just perfectly working. And I love that you've like adopted this very peaceful practice in the middle of mayhem. And
it's literally the most possible chaos.
yeah, but it's so cool what you said that you're like, everyone has 30 seconds. Like you just do. Like, I feel like that's where I think a lot of times we think that these practices have to look one way. And I think what's so cool about so many of the things you're talking about, Narie, is like between the journaling, whether it's like word vomiting verbally or on a page or zoning out and doing that anywhere, which by the way, from a research perspective is so good for you. So good for you.
Right. Validation.
Exactly. And then these like little mini meditation moments during mayhem. Like, I think that's just so cool that you found those practices. So we always ask a couple rapid fire questions. You've got so much good wisdom here, so I want to capture it for everybody. So first question, best piece of life advice. It could be of your lifetime or that you're thinking about right now.
Two come to mind, which are kind of similar. One is an uncle when I was in high school told me, do something that scares you every day. And just nobody had ever said advice, like looked me in the eye and given me sort of like a memorable sentence of advice. Do something that scares you every day. So it just like stuck in my brain, and I don't, yeah. And I still think about it, and I think, I don't know if I do every day, but I very often do things that scare me. And maybe because I'm scared of a lot of things. But it just like, again, like having someone say, no, it's actually really good for you. So that a big one. And then the other one more recently, that maybe in the past 5 years, the mentor of mine said, how does he put it? People don't remember your failures. They remember how committed you were. Mm-hmm. And that really, I sorted away, but I didn't really know what he meant. And then now I would say, having done this show is the first time that I'm sort of like, oh, it's not that the show is a failure, but it's just, it's loose. It's experimental. It's not perfect by any means. But I feel like what I'm presenting to the world that I'm the most proud of is not actually the show, but just how much I've thrown myself into it. And I can tell from the feedback I'm getting that that's the part that's inspiring, almost like regardless of the actual, like how many laughs it got or how many, whatever stars it got. So that's, yeah. And now I'm starting to pay attention to other examples, you included, right? Where it's like, you're so committed, and that's what people remember. I mean, like, even, yeah, it will always be what people remember. And especially when you're still building something and it's not sort of done yet. But it's nothing's more inspiring than watching someone sort of pour their heart into something, even if you're like, I don't really get it, which is in my case a lot of the responses. But it's like, but I respect you because I can see how much you care about this. So yeah, those are the two.
They're so good, and they're very balanced. I've never heard the first one I've heard, which I love. I also am scared of a lot of things and try to do those things as well. I always joke, as an entrepreneur and a creative, you don't get to do the same thing usually over and over again. You're just constantly bad at things.
Yep.
And therefore they're kind of scary, especially when I also can relate to perfectionism. Yep. So you're in good company. And the second one, that people won't remember your failures, but how committed you were, like that could like bring me to tears. Cause it's true. Like it makes me think of a lot of people in my life. So thank you for sharing that one. Okay. The third question is two parts. One is, what's next for you? So you just did this one woman show at Edinburgh called One in a Chameleon. What do you think's coming up? And then the second is, how can everyone find you if they want to follow you, watch your stuff, and start a conversation?
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I have you, yeah, sort of further down the wall for me is my wall of Post-it notes. I have, I think, 9 ideas that I'm really excited about. And yeah, so this marks the sort of the first week that you could either call it unemployed or full-time artist. So yeah, so I'm the biggest thing I'm excited about working on, or the maybe biggest project, is I'm writing either a play or a screenplay. I haven't decided which one it will become first. And it's a rom-com, and um, and it's just something I've always wanted to do. And again, I think having done this solo show, I'm trying to sort of bottle this energy of like, I really feel like I can do anything, even though I also simultaneously know I'm super novice at this. But so that's sort of like the biggest project I'm biting off. Um, and then I have a bunch of other creative things that I'm excited to start putting out there. Some of which are more like, okay, this is something that can actually make money in the nearer term. And then other ones are sort of like bigger, long term things to learn. And the biggest thing I want to learn next is how to direct play and or film. But that's sort of just like, that's the learning channel. What I do, the other doing and creating. So the best way to follow me is on my Instagram, created for this show, but that I'm going to keep going even beyond this show. And that's called at One in a Chameleon, one like the number. And yeah, follow along, stay tuned.
Amazing.
I don't know either what's next.
Those half-day Instagram posts are worth it, people. Check them out. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, Narie, for taking the time to share more about your story and your process and your mental fitness tools. You are just one of my favorite people, which you already know. And so it's so cool to be able to share more of you with the world. We will have all of her information in the show notes. And for those who are interested, we'd love you to continue following along on our Modern Mind interview series. If you or someone you know has a particularly interesting mental fitness story and or tools they use on a regular basis, we would love to hear from you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Narie.
Thank you, Lissy. Thanks, Mindy.